As a little child, I tasted the bitter fruits of racism, and I didn't like it. I didn't like seeing those signs. I didn't like when I went to the theater. All of us little black children had to go upstairs to the balcony, and all the little white children went downstairs to the first floor. I would come home and ask my mother, my father, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, why? They would say, that's the way it is. Don't get in the way, don't get in trouble. But one day in 1955, 15 years old, in the 10th grade, I heard about Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Martin Luther King Jr. on old radio. The action of Rosa Parks, the words and leadership of Martin Luther King Jr. inspired me to find a way to get in the way. And I got in trouble. Good trouble. Necessary trouble.
Ain't gonna let no Billy Club turn me around, oh no, turn me around. Ain't gonna let no Billy Club turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. That's what John is. When I was growing up, my mother, Coretta Scott King, consistently said to us that unearned suffering is redemptive. I came to see that the life of Congressman John Lewis, whom we in my family affectionately called Uncle John, embodied this principle and demonstrated the courage of conviction to live it out. Who knew that on March 7th, 1965, while marching for voting rights, a vicious encounter on the Edmund Pettus Bridge would culminate with a legacy of leadership from protest lines to legislative halls. Uncle John marched across that bridge toward a cruel beating, not knowing that he would one day not only serve in Congress, but serve under the two-term first black president of the United States. Uncle John epitomized the fourth principle of nonviolence, Bernard, and should serve as a constant reminder to humanity of its truth. The most astounding thing about Congressman Lewis being left for dead on that bridge is how he got up both physically and spiritually. When he recovered without a trace of bitterness or hostility and without losing hope in our democracy. Beyond what he sacrificed in working for voting rights and being beaten, trampled, tear-gassed, and bloodied as he, along with Jose Williams, Amelia Boynton, James Orange, and countless foot soldiers crossed that Edmund Pettus Bridge, John Lewis's life became a beacon of light, showing us how to be the beloved community.
All across the American South, during the end of the winter and the beginning of the spring of 1960, hundreds and thousands of black college students were deeply inspired and moved by the action of four young men who took seat at a lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. On the other hand, there were young people already studying the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence in Nashville. Students from Fisk University, Tennessee State, American Baptist College, and Vanderbilt and Peabody. So when the students start sitting in Greensboro, we have already had test sit-ins in Nashville in November and December of '59. And we received a call from a Methodist minister in North Carolina saying, what can the students in Nashville do to support the student in North Carolina? And we start sitting in on a regular basis. The sit-in spread across the South like wildfire. All over North Carolina, all over Tennessee, throughout Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, all the way to Texas. And there were people in the North participating in protests at Woolworth and Walgreens and other stores in sympathy with the students in the South. And some people were heard to say, by sitting down, these young people are standing up for the very best in American tradition. Martin Luther King Jr. was so pleased. He was gratified. He was deeply moved and touched to see this new militancy on the part of the students. Because he knew then that his message of nonviolence and passive resistance would live, and it would be moving around the South, embedded in the very being of these young people. So he asked a young lady by the name of Ella Baker, who was on his staff. Ella Baker was born in North Carolina. She had worked for the YWCA, worked for the NAACP, and she was the executive director of SCLC, like an executive assistant to Dr. King. He suggested to her to call a meeting, organize a meeting, bring these students together. And Dr. King saw the young people, saw these students as being the youth arm of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. But Ella Baker had other ideas. She, in a sense, defined the suggestion, the recommendation of Dr. King. Ella Baker was older than all of us, but she was radical. She was militant. She was aggressive. And she was very young in her ideas. She was almost revolutionary. And in the meetings, she would say and charge people to do what you think is best, that you should have your own organization. And she brought in Jim Lawson, who was our teacher, who had taught us the philosophy and the discipline of nonviolence in Nashville. And Jim spoke to the group, along with Dr. King and others. Okay. So at the meeting, Easter weekend, April 60, at Shaw University in Raleigh, North Carolina, SNCC became the temporary Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And Marion Barry, who was a graduate student in chemistry at Fisk University, became the temporary chair of the temporary Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
John Lewis's work in Nashville's civil rights movement propelled him to the national stage as a bloodied freedom writer, a battered marcher, a prominent speaker, and for the past quarter century, a congressman from Georgia. But people who have known him for more than 50 years say steadfast resolve and awe-inspiring courage have always been at the core of Lewis's character.
John Lewis was just the most determined of them all. Whether it was 3 or 5 or a dozen or 2 dozen, he was going to march as often as it made sense. Somewhere there's a picture of John being gassed, but there were only a handful of marchers. He led those marchers on a regular basis. He didn't want it ever to appear that the challenge wasn't going to be made. That determination ultimately is what led his colleagues to identify him as the leader.
Born in 1940, Lewis came to Nashville's American Baptist Theological Seminary in 1957 from Troy, Alabama, where his parents were sharecroppers. He wanted to be a preacher. But even as he listened carefully to ministers like Kelly Miller Smith of First Baptist Church, Capitol Hill, he found himself drawn into the movement and a life of nonviolent action.
His approach to the whole thing was unique because you knew if you were in a meeting and there was a discussion and an option, he's going to take the most aggressive option. Take it nonviolently. I mean, he's an apostle of nonviolence.
Lewis and other students from the city's 4 black colleges and universities led sit-ins to desegregate downtown lunch counters and stand-ins at movie theaters. In the spring of 1961, they helped bring the movement into America's consciousness by keeping the freedom rides alive after violence had temporarily stopped them. 2 years later, Lewis was elected chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and spoke at the March on Washington. He had to edit his remarks after people close to President John F. Kennedy objected to some of the language, but his speech still hit hard.
By the force of our demands, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. John Lewis.
Lewis was in the middle of the action again in 1965 when he led a group of marchers across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, and was beaten by state troopers. The violence appalled much of the nation, and President Lyndon B. Johnson quickly started working to pass the Voting Rights Act. After helping to secure voting rights for African Americans, Lewis eventually turned to politics, winning a seat on the Atlanta City Council before running for Congress. This child of rural Alabama was elected to represent the New South's biggest city in 1986 and is now serving his 14th term.
It was the one way he could go rather than to the church where he thought he could make a difference. I mean, he talked as a very young boy. He talked about being a preacher and how he was going to lead people of the beloved community through his role as a minister of the gospel. And I think he found politics as a more powerful way to do that. In a real sense, I think politics is his ministry.
We have to find a way to bring fairness and justice to all of our people. And no one should be left out or left behind because of the race or the color. I said from time to time, we're one people. We're one family. We all live in the same house. Not just the American house, but the world house.
I saw John Lewis, and I know he was a very good man, even though I didn't get to see him in reality. I know I can still tell he was a really good man by listening to all the recordings of what he did. And I just love that he does that. Back then, you couldn't play with your friends if they were white. You can only play with your black friends. So that just really touches me that I'm allowed to do that. And I know one of the people who did it was John Lewis, helped us do that.
We're going to get into that good trouble. He doesn't have to worry about it. We got it from here. He lived a long life. He led a good fight. Job well done. Rest in peace and rest in power, because we're going to carry it on. We want to thank him for his life. We want to thank him for his sacrifice. We want to thank him for his fight. But now we want him to rest in peace and rest in power, because we got it from here. Like right now, what's going on in the streets, it's beautiful and amazing to see so many allies standing with us, people of color, who have been suffering under this, in this country, with our ancestors coming here and being enslavement for 350 years, another 100 years of Jim Crow. It's so beautiful to see all these other races and people coming together with us and saying, yes, Black lives do matter. That's what it takes. We're all in this together. We're all American. So we need everybody. So this is such a beautiful movement, and I'm so just grateful that Congressman Lewis got to see it before he departed this earth.
I was on Fairview Avenue when Bloody Sunday finally had a chance to come across the bridge. The school I attended, George Washington Carver High School, we all came out that day and lined the street as they proceeded down the street when they finally made that pilgrimage from Selma to Montgomery, and the state troopers, all of them gathered on the campus of George Washington Carver. And then that night when they had the celebration at St. Jude School, I was there when Aretha Franklin, Harry Belafonte, Peter, Paul, and Mary, all of those people, I was there. This is a legacy that all of us should continue to carry on as long as we have breath in our bodies.
At the age of 13, it was the beginning of starting the march from Selma to Montgomery. One thing that struck me, I seen all these National Guards with these long guns along the route, and I seen a lot of yelling and spitting from some of the whites here in Montgomery as the state troopers kept them away from us. But we kept marching, and my memory was one of the songs, "Ain't Gonna Let Nobody Turn Us Around." And I've seen Montgomery change, Alabama. When I was growing up as a little kid, I seen black and white fountains. My grandmother, when I came here to retire in January, I live here on Dexter Avenue, a building called the Crescent Building, 39 Crescent. My grandmother or I could not go in that building for anything. Now I live there. Where my mother and grandmother could not go, I can lay there now. So this is my history, and I'm glad I'm home. Today, I was in Selma to see that they brought his body across the bridge, to see that George Wallace did not win. John Lewis won. I was there, and I seen it.
I felt compelled to be out here to bring respect to a civil rights activist who did not just talk his talk, but walk this talk. It's not every day you see that, and they don't, and that's the same with C.T. Evans, that is something that you don't see every day. They don't make them like they used to. For me, Montgomery is history. It's a city where there is history that has been made, a history that is still in the making. It just feels good to come out here and join thousands and thousands of people to bring respect to one of the greatest civil rights icons that will ever probably live in our time.
People get into all kinds of trouble, but I'd rather get into trouble fighting for something that is going to help the masses instead of, something that's only going to help myself. And right now, the masses need help. Just to be a part of this is a big deal because this is history. I've stopped myself from crying a few times because I didn't. It's just a feeling in the air. It just feels good to be here and to not see any drama and any fighting and any nonsense that is going on in multiple other cities. And just to pay respect. It just means a lot to be able to pay respect to somebody who's done such a big deal.
In 1958, I met Martin Luther King Jr. and it set me on a path to get involved. I got in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble. This young man, my friend, my brother, Jim Spurr, we both gave blood, a little blood, at the Greyhound bus station in Montgomery. Blood to redeem the soul of America, to change our country, to make it better. So when someone said to me, John Lewis, nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes. I will show you change. You will not see the signs that we saw. Those signs are gone, and they will not return. The only place that you will see those signs today will be in a book, in a museum, on a video. Our country is a better country, but there's still basic human needs that must be met. And I appeal to you as graduates to go out there and find a way to get in the way. Go out there and find a way to get in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble, to make our country and the world community better.